Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Adam Tamia. I will be acting as the zoning administrator for this meeting being held on Thursday, December 23rd, 2021 at 3 p.m. in San Clemente City Hall. I will call the meeting to order at 3:01 p.m. The first item on the agenda is to receive and file minutes of the zoning administrator meeting of October 21st, 2021. Stephanie, are you aware if Cecilia reviewed and approved these minutes as they are currently written?
Unfortunately, that's not information that I have.
Okay, then I will push that item off to the next agenda. I'm not familiar with the what was actually spoken at that meeting, so I do not want to receive and file those at this time. That will be taken care of at the next meeting. So the next item is item 4A, our public hearing, and this is a minor exception permit request. Planner is Kyle Weber, but Stephanie Rojas will be presenting on his behalf today. So Stephanie, please.
Sure, yes. Thank you. Good afternoon, Zoning Administrator. As you mentioned, this minor exception permit application is a request to allow a garage encroachment into the required front yard setback on a developed residential property. The residence is legal non-conforming due to the fact that there is no existing covered parking on site. Normally, the zoning code requires 2 covered parking spaces on site. It is a hilly street, so from Avenida de la Estrella, the lot has an upward slope with a grade difference of approximately 24 feet between the front and rear of the lot. So, the minor exception permit is requesting the construction of a garage, which would be 5 feet from the front property line, where the zoning code normally requires an 18-foot front yard setback. The zoning code does allow for a reduced setback for in-the-bank garages when certain criteria is met with regard to the grade difference. And this encroachment of in-the-bank garages within the front yard setback is allowed by the code with zoning administrator approval of a minor exception permit. The purpose of this encroachment is that the code recognizes that these types of encroachments are needed to reduce the need for mass grading or fill and allow structures to follow the natural topography of the site. The proposed detached garage does meet the criteria needed to qualify for a minor exception permit. So specifically on figure 2 of page 2 of the staff report, it does provide a side elevation showing the significant grade difference between the front property line and the rear of the home. And one thing that I will note is on this figure, it does make reference to a decking system on top of the garage. However, if you do refer to sheet A4 of the architectural plans, there are specific call outs that say that the top of the garage will not be used as a deck. So staff the project does meet required findings for a minor exception permit, as well as additional special requirements that are specified in the code for in-the-bank garages. A couple of things that staff does want to highlight for supporting the project and in support of the findings is that this project would remove a non-conforming site condition by allowing the property owner to meet the parking requirements. By providing on-site parking, which is not currently provided on the property, this does reduce the need for vehicles to park on the streets, which contributes to the overall neighborhood safety as well as the aesthetics. Overall, in addition to the garage construction, additional improvements are proposed to the landscaping. So overall, with all of the various improvements proposed to the site, this project would significantly improve on-site landscaping by establishing a more cohesive landscape palette and creating a more coordinated design in character with neighboring properties. And third, staff does want to mention that this project is compatible with surrounding uses and consistent with the character of the neighborhood. There are a number of neighboring properties south of the site that have approved in-the-bank garages, which encroach into the required front yard setback as well. Additional justification for this project is specified in the staff report as well as the findings in the resolution. So with that, staff does recommend approval of this project with conditions of approval. And joining us here today, we have the architect as well as the property owner.
Thank you very much. Would the applicant or somebody on the applicant's team like to make a statement?
Just wanted to make a statement that Jeremy Hawk with Stroco Engineering Construction. We helped design the plans and plan on doing the construction of the project. Just felt that it fit in with the neighborhood with multiple in-bank garages, and that seemed to meet all of the city's requirements for that EP. And just wanted to note that we do have some neighbors here that are positive about the project and excited to see this go through.
All right. With that, I will open the public hearing. Are there any members of the public that would like to make any statements on behalf of this about this project?
Just that I support it wholeheartedly.
For the record, could you state your name?
My name is Heather Gilbert. I'm a San Clemente resident, and I live at 1412 Alameda de la Australia. So 2 houses up from the current resident. This house and how it faces the street is in great need of improvement. It does fit what we see up and down the street with the in-bank garage. Street parking is consistently an issue on this street, so getting as many cars off the street as we can is favorable to everyone. And quite honestly, I learned of this project about 18 months ago and have been very excited about it ever since. It will definitely not only improve the block and property values of the residents of Australia.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. With that, seeing no other...
If I may add, we did receive one public comment. Would you like me to read it into the record? It's very short.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so this email was received from Angela Hulas and Jake Reeson, who are neighbors at 102 Kai Redondadel. Probably butchering the name. But they state, as a neighbor in the same block, we are very much in support of this project.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
No, that was all.
Thank you. All right. With that, I will close the public hearing. Let's see. I do have a couple questions. I'll direct this to the applicant to start. Is there any intention of converting this or I guess converting this to habitable space at any point in the future?
No.
Okay. And then as far as the decking questions that were raised, the intention is not to put a roof deck on the garage.
No, at this point, it was just a cost-effective roofing solution.
Okay. And then looking at, I drove by the site and I do agree that with the neighbors as well as the applicants that the site is ripe for improvement in the front yard area. Looking at it on Google Maps, I saw the trash receptacles were in the current parking area. The size of the garage indicates that it is larger than the minimum parking space requirements for 2 vehicles. So I just want to confirm, is the trash intended to be stored in the garage?
Yes.
Okay.
Those are screened.
Okay, perfect. That there is a code requirement that it be screened, and I can understand why it's difficult to comply with that at this time. Okay, well, with that, I am supportive of this project. I think that staff has done a great job describing why the application and request for a reduced front yard setback to allow for the garage meets the findings. Because of the allowance for this structure to encroach into the front yard setback, to allow for a reduction in the amount of grading necessary to make 2 legal parking spots, I believe that it is necessary to add some additional conditions of approval, specifically that the garage cannot be converted into an accessory dwelling unit or used for habitable purposes. If that is the desire, that can be done on the property without the reduced setback. The purpose of this permit is to facilitate a reduction in the amount of grading necessary to get a vehicle off the street into a parking spot. But if the intention was for habitable purposes, people can get themselves upstairs in a way that vehicles cannot. And then the deck question, I believe that while this is a great thing to facilitate parking, a deck, if it's contemplated in the future, and keeping in mind that these permits run with the land, so people don't own their properties forever, and new property owners may come in and want to do something else. I would be comfortable with a condition of approval that simply states that a deck on the roof could not encroach into the 20-foot setback. That's not the entirety of the structure, so you could still have a deck up there, but I think for the neighborhood, it would be best if we reduce the ability for a deck to be so close to the street.
Would that just trying to think of living homes in the neighborhood. I feel like we've got that condition. I know you don't want to do anything like that with us, but if you were to sell in the future, I'm just worried about that condition where, so long that the homeowner, if they're looking at a house 1 or 2 up from you.
She's
that have
like
that-
2 up, but
that
it's
have
not, yeah, it's attached to her house.
It's like a deck walkway. It is
Yeah.
attached to the house, but it's still a deck
Oh.
in the front yard setback.
Yes, the city does have a lot of those. The code allows for decks to be built on top of garages that were legally established.
Right.
Those garages were legally established at a time when there was no conditional permit required to put a garage where they're located. This is a request to allow a garage to encroach in an area where it would not otherwise be allowed. If in the future an applicant or a property owner would like to amend this permit, they could come through the process and do it. At this time, that's not part of the request, and there has been no analysis about the potential impacts of allowing a structure that could facilitate a deck that close to the front setback. In my capacity as the Deputy Community Development Director, I oversee the Planning Division and I oversee the Code Compliance Division. And I know that decks that are very close to the street tend to generate calls more than decks that are within the setbacks. So that does not preclude the ability to have a deck on at least the back, what looks to me to be the back half of the lot, or excuse me, of the proposed structure. So I'm comfortable approving this with those two conditions.
What would the process be for doing that request? If, say, she sold this house in 2 years and somebody wanted to turn that into a deck, what would be the process? Would be another MEP, something like that, for approval?
It would be an MEP or a modification to this MEP to specifically allow for the deck improvements.
Okay, just have to justify it by the neighborhood, something like that.
There's a section of the code that allows for applicant requests to modify an approved project, and it depends on the amount of potential public impact or concern. And if it's found to be an insignificant modification with very low likelihood of public impact or concern, it could be an administrative approval. If it's insignificant with but still with the potential to have public impact or concern, it would come back to this hearing body.
Okay.
I'm not
If
worried
you're
about it.
not worried
I'm not
about it, I
worried
know, I
about
just
it.
don't like to peg you into something that
Yeah.
you're selling house.
I mean, one day I might want to expand the house out over the garage, so who knows what I'm going to do in the next 2 to 5 years. So for right now, this doesn't worry me.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, then with that, let's see, the first thing I will do is recommendations. Okay, so I will determine the project is categorically exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA Guidelines 15305, Class 5 minor alterations in land use limitations. And 2, I will adopt Resolution ZA number 21-028, approving minor exception permit 21-063, Ben Ezra in-bank garage, subject to attached conditions with the addition of 2 conditions. The first being that no decks on top of the proposed garage shall encroach into the front yard setback area. And the second being that, I'll specify this as best I can, that notwithstanding any federal or state laws prohibiting such condition, the applicant, owner, or their designee understands and acknowledges that the city will not approve any permits to convert the garage interior space for habitable purposes, including but not limited to conversion to an accessory dwelling unit. And with that, you have your approval. There is an appeal period for both the public and the city council. The public's appeal period ends in 10 days, and that appeal period would include an appeal that you would like to make. The city council's appeal period ends when they receive and file the minutes from this meeting, when presented at their meeting. And it's important because the next city council meeting has been canceled, which it would normally occur on January 4th, which means that the appeal period does not end until January 18th.
Okay.
That doesn't
No.
preclude you from submitting permits ahead of time.
Right.
And I will let you know that the city is, because of some staff shortages, we're running a little bit behind on issuing building permits. But planning is not going to be able to stamp off on the final plans until the city council's appeal period has ended. So
But that process can be started.
that process can absolutely be started. To the extent that we're able to, we would like to get this approved for you as soon as possible. But I just want to let you know that there's, the winter furlough tends to push things back, and then
I've heard nothing but that this whole entire time, so this is not news to me.
okay,
It's very frustrating,
we
especially since we started this in July of 2020, but this is fine.
I appreciate your patience with us, and we are doing everything in our power as a city to overcome these challenges. And like as I mentioned, to the extent that we can, we will try to expedite your project.
Thank you.
All right. With that, run through. I should probably, for the record, just say that I skipped over oral and written communications
Okay.
entirely. We did hear from Ms. Gilbert to speak on this last application. Do you have any oral communication that you would like to make for the meeting generally? If not, that's a good thing, and we'll move on. We have no new business, no old business, and so at this point I will adjourn. The next regular meeting of the zoning administrator will be held at 3 p.m. on Thursday, January 6th at the Community Development Department, first floor, community room. Is that right? Do we have any items on the 6th?
I don't think so.
Located at 910 Calle Negocio, San Clemente, California.